My name is Josh Harnagel, and I'm the VP of Marketing for Redbird. I am a CFI, II, and an MEI, or I let it expire, but we'll get it back soon. And I have quite a bit of experience instructing in Redbirds. We used to run a flight school in San Marcos called Skyport that you may have heard of. And I was part of the management team there and did quite a bit of instructing there. Also have some additional experience in the PPC and places like that at Oshkosh. Today we're going to talk about Navigator, which is basically the operating system for our Redbird. Any current Redbird, that everything from the J all the way up through the larger sims like an MCX or an FMX, all use Navigator as the way to start flights, stop flights, pause, change the weather, all that kind of stuff. There are a few different versions of it depending on what sim you're on. We're going to be looking at a version of Navigator that's running on an MCX, and we're going to be looking at a live version of it and using it to kick off flights and stuff like that. If you're on a J or a TD, there are a few things that you won't have access to by default, including the instructor station. That is an available option. You can get that as an upgrade and add instructor station to a J or a TD. But if you're on one of the larger sims, an FMX, an MCX, something like that, you will have the instructor station. So let's go ahead and pull up Navigator here. Okay. So we are looking at the home screen for Redbird Navigator. When you show up at a sim, if it's a J or a TD, this will be on the front page. It'll just be the thing that's shown and you use the keyboard to interact with it. If you're going into an MCX or an FMX or something like that, you can pull this up on the screen and on the built-in screen on the sim and use a keyboard that's plugged into the sim to access it. You can also pull it up on an iPad or laptop or anything like that. It's just a web-based UI. So you go, as long as you're on the same network as the sim, you can go to, I think it's like fmx.redbirdflight.com. We can actually change what that URL is to access Navigator, and it'll show up on the screen where you can get to it. So it should be fairly easy to get to. You can always just use it straight on the sim if you don't have a second device to access it. That does make it so you're not able to use the instructor station if you're on a big sim, because once the flight loads, it covers up the screen and you're not able to access Navigator directly. So it is probably, it was designed for, and the best use case is an iPad that is connected to the network, the Navigator network associated with that sim. Just want to make sure we've had a couple other people join. If you have any questions, just type them into the Q&A panel, and I will get to them as they come in. So to start with, this is the home screen for Navigator. We'll start at we'll actually start with sim management, because it's one that if you own a sim or fly a sim a lot, there's some useful stuff in there, and it's a little hidden, and some people don't really know that it's around. So we'll start there. So if we click on sim management, it'll pull up an desktop or a dashboard overview of what the sim is. This one in particular, is, we have a serial number, MCX 10231. It's got 25 hours. This is sitting in our testing room right now being tested. We're actually going to take this unit to Oshkosh, and then I believe it'll go on to Little Falls Community School. We have some information. We have the data around the device connections. This is part of the qualification requirement. Part of the qualification requirement. And the only thing that's not required, well, the two things that are not required is motion system and internet. Technically, it is much better if you use the internet with any of our software for sure, or with any of the sims. Okay, so Lonnie, hey Lonnie, we got a question here about doesn't have the pretty icons nor some of the icons. How do we get this newest UI? So you are probably on a version of Navigator that predates the auto updater. So in that case, you call into support and say, we need to update to the latest version of Navigator. We have right now, this is running 3.6.12, which is probably the most recent version of Navigator. And we can, in this sim management, page, we're able to show all of the software versions that are installed on the sim. So if you have, hey Ron, good to see you. I'm glad you're here from Little Falls. So you can see all the versions of the software that's installed on this sim, and when they were updated. You can also go to, like, let's say we want to see the changelog. I can click on that and it'll pull up a changelog, which will show all the things that were added and updated on this specific version. So there was an update that came out 6 days ago that added some fixes and included some new tweaks for the score screen and stuff like that. All the changelog is in here, and you can always go back and check and see and reference that if you have any questions about it. We also have the aircraft that's installed and the version associated with that. So generally speaking, this has got all your version numbers. If you have a support problem and they say, what version of instructor station do you have? You can come in here and find out. They can usually access it remotely, but this can just be sort of a helpful thing to have. If you're on a newer version of Navigator, assuming you are, we have built in an auto update feature where if the device is connected to the internet, when we publish an update, it pulls for that and it pulls it down. It'll let you know that it's available and you can download it automatically without having to involve the support department. To do that, we click on updates, and then it'll say log in to view updates. This is a common question. The default password for these sims is Redbird 12345. And in this case, we show no software updates that were sort of automatically pulled. We can hit refresh, double check. Nope, we don't see anything. Good to go there. If we did see an update here, it would show the ability to download it and then the ability to install it. Now, settings, again, password is Redbird 12345, and it's a capital R, Redbird 12345 on the password. So the reason we put these behind passwords is because this can have a real impact on the way the sim works, the things that are available to it. So it's useful. It is good to keep these behind a password. Excuse me. So let's go through these real quick. Oh wait, we got a question here. Sim management does not update the Hobbs value after a flood is. Okay. So the sim. We'll go back here real quick. Paul Jones has got a very good point here. This Hobbs number right here in Sims management, where it says 25.9, does not update after a flight ends. Basically, you got to reload Navigator. So if you shut the computer down, turn it back on in the morning, it'll be accurate. But at the end of the day, it won't be accurate. You can, if you don't want to shut the computer all the way down or not, you can stop Navigator, close it, and then reload it, which is an icon on the desktop of the sim. There's a restart Navigator or stop Navigator, and then it'll pull up the correct value. That's not auto updated after every flight. So thank you for that, Paul. Okay, so in our settings feature, we have Sidekick uploads is when you are logged into an account, which is up here, and we'll talk about in a sec. When you're logged into account, if you fly a flight, whether it's a free flight or gift flight or anything like that, and Sidekick uploads are enabled, that flight history will be pushed to your Redbird account, the associated Redbird account for that, whoever's logged in. If you're doing something like using gift, it's very helpful because then you can upload your scores. If you're in a high school or a middle school that uses simulated flight school, you have to have that on for the scores to get uploaded into the learning management system so you can see those. That's really one of the first things that if people are having problems with syncing, that's the first thing to check. If you have a government contract and you don't want, you have to control data privacy stuff, you can turn that off and that functionality will be disabled, but the data doesn't go anywhere. I will say any flight data is only associated with the account that is logged into Navigator. There is generic or anonymous like record of a flight happened on this sim that is associated with the sim itself. But any scores, the lat longs, all that kind of stuff is all associated with the account that is logged into Navigator when that flight takes place. Orbit is our, we call it reality mode. It's be able to break the laws of physics. We'll get into that as well. Anonymous mode allows you to fly the sim without logging in. So by default, when you get into Navigator, you're in anonymous mode if this is enabled, and when you fly a flight, it doesn't get tied back to your Redbird account or anything like that. And you aren't able to, if you have a license for gift or something, it's not activated until you log in. So free flight is it's pretty straightforward. You can start a flight from anywhere versus only pre-programmed flights. There are some schools and programs that only want students to launch from a saved flight, and they don't want them to be able to just type in and go wherever they want. So that enables you to turn that on and off. The scenario store has content flights mostly, exclusively, that you can download, gift, simulated flight school, and then there's some other not free content packs that are available as well. Find My Sim. This is on the Redbird website. There's a locator.redbirdflight.com that shows where sims are. And if you turn this off, you will not show up on that website. If you turn it on, you will show up on that website. Essentially, these are all pretty straightforward. Require the password, use metric units for all the Navigator stuff. Now, this only applies to Navigator. It doesn't apply to the sim. You need to select that as well, I think. And then auto apply critical updates. That's an important one to put in there. When we do an update, most of the time it's features, minor bug fixes, that kind of stuff. And we allow you to select when you want that update to happen. So that way it doesn't, happen in the middle of a busy day of flying and something breaks. But if there is a critical update, like a security patch or something like that, with this on, it will automatically update as soon as it downloads. We can set our simulator name. We can change the tail number on the sim, and then you can set your admin. This is actually, this is actually quite useful. So from a support standpoint, we have a lot of sims where, instructors will report issues, but then they go on and they're flying, and they really are not the right person to handle fixing the problem. But that's where when the support case comes in, it's associated with that person. If you put in a name, a phone number, and email here, when a support case is generated for @sim, this person will also be notified that a case has been created and will be part of the contact. So we'll be able to work better with that person. And you can also change your password so that Redbird capital R 12345 that you use to log into settings and updates can be changed here as well. All right, we got a couple of questions. Is there a manual that explains all of this? Yes, both online, printed, and actually in the app itself. The question for, can you quickly repeat the function of anonymous mode? So anonymous mode allows you to fly without logging in. So you don't need to identify who the pilot is to start a flight or anything. That will only work for free flight and save flights. Gift and those licensed flight types do require you to log in. But if you're working in a school where you just, people aren't really tracking what they're doing on the sim outside of like a paper logbook or for flight, anonymous mode is fine. You can just hop in, start a flight, and go to it. Most people fly under anonymous mode unless they're using gift. Okay, next question. Thomas is asking, will the sim work on Windows 11 or do we need to stay with 10? I would say stay with what you have now. I believe it'll work on 11, but I don't know that for a fact. And if switching operating systems is a big deal, and so the support folks that are better qualified to handle that will do that when the time comes. But I believe we are still on Windows 10. In fact, I think we can go in here and look. Yeah, this is running Windows 10 Pro here, and this is a brand new unit, so Windows 10 is what we're running. Okay, so let's go back to our home screen. And before we move on to the other thing, let's talk a little bit about logging in. So right now I am logged in as Joshua Harnagle. That's me. I can click log out, which I'll do in a second, but that means that anything I do on this will get uploaded to my account, and I'll be able to go to account.redbirdflight.com and view it. So I should be able to see that here. And I can go and have a Google Analytics for y'all. We have here's all of the flights that I've done associated with this account. I use different ones, but so I have all these free flights that I flew at various times, Hobbs hours. There's also some, gift flights. If I click on this, I can see this one didn't generate scores, but I could see what I was doing and the scores that I get. To enable this, you have to have Sidekick uploads enabled, and you need to log in up here. This also does, if I go into Dispatch, which is the app that I use to launch flights, everything launches out of Dispatch. I have a gift license for Gift Private Pilot. And so these flights with the green flag on them, these are all gift flights, guided independent flight training that have scoring, coaching built into them. These are all enabled because I am logged in and my account has a license associated with it. If I were to go back here and click log out, okay, now I'm flying as anonymous mode. I go back to dispatch and these flights are locked. I cannot fly them. So to do that, I have to get back in and unlock those flights. I have a couple of options. I can go here and I can click log in. When I do that, I can log in with a pilot key, which is the USB key that I can create with my account on the website. And if the sim does not have an internet connection, this is the way you log in. Is you create a pilot key, you put it on a USB thumb drive and plug it into the sim. It'll ask for a PIN number, and then it'll say, oh, here you are, got you. If you are connected to the internet, you can also use the pilot key, but you can do the login via Redbird, and it'll take you here. And you'll be able to log in with your Redbird account. Allow access. And now I'm in Navigator and I'm logged in, and now I have access to my gift flights. Okay. Any questions about logging in? All right. Quick shortcut here. I can pull up that devices list and make sure that I have everything connected. Yoke. So a flight won't launch if it doesn't have a yoke, avionics panel, switch panel, throttle, and rudder pedals connected for a large sim. For the smaller sims, it doesn't need rudder pedals. And like the J's have a different device list. Okay. So we've done a sim management. Now, real quick to answer the earlier question that an anonymous attendee asked. We have on this home screen of Navigator, click home, we have a Navigator user's guide, which is pull up the user's guide. This one is, I think this is the most recent version. It's a little dated, but it's got all the main features. I don't think there's anything major we've added since this one. I know we're working on a new update for this. It's also available online, and you can print it as well. It's just a PDF. Okay, we got a question from Lonnie. Will the newest Navigator version require a login? It will not require a login. You can continue to use anonymous mode as long as it's enabled in sim management under settings. Just to refresh, Redbird 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Anonymous mode enabled. As long as that is turned on, you do not need to log in to get access to the sim. That will prevent you from, if you're not logged in or you're not using a pilot key, again, you won't be able to use gift or anything, and the flights won't get uploaded to your account. But if you're just doing a standard flight without caring about uploading it, anonymous mode works fine. Okay. Another, I'm actually not going to click this because I think I'm using a Connect session right now to show this, to show Navigator. But what Connect enables you to do is share your sim session with somebody over the internet so that they can access Navigator when you're not, without being present, and they can use that to control the sim, primarily with the instructor station. So for remote training sessions or something like that, all it does is it gives a code. The person who's going to connect to the sim goes to Redbird Flight or flyredbird.com, types in that code, and then they're tunneled with a VPN, very secure, not VPN, reverse proxy, into that sim, and they're able to control it remotely. Okay, so I think that's all the big ones. Now we'll get into the okay, so let's get into dispatch here. So if we go to dispatch, we default to all, which is just a list of all the flights that are available, saved on this sim. In this case, I've downloaded the gift content pack. Actually, I'm going to go back one. Let's go back to Scenario Store so we can talk about that a little bit. So Scenario Store has got missions, flights in bundles that you can download. I have Gift Private Pilot V2 installed on this one. If I wanted to do the instrument rating, I can click download. It will go out to the website, download it, install it on the machine, and it'll be available. We also have some of these other programs we've built that are available. I think Simulated Flight requires a license, but then any of these EAA, PPC ones, and then the STEM bundle do not require a license to access. So once you've downloaded that, it'll actually show up here in dispatch. And so now you notice I have my ILS localizer, VOR, all these gift instrument missions as well to fly, gift flights as well. I can say, let's say ILS is a favorite and go around as a favorite. So I can click the little star there, go to favorites, and boom, now I have my favorites to keep that list a little shorter. I can also search. Let's say I want to do landings. All right, type in landing. I have all the landing missions. I can filter, gift instrument, apply. There's all my gift instrument flights. I can do in sort by alphabetically, by product, etc. So what this allows me to do, because if you have private pilot, gift private, gift instrument, some of the other bundles, you've created a bunch of saved flights, and every time you make a saved flight, it ends up in here. And we'll get to that in a little bit. This list of flights can get a little overwhelming and hard to sort. So that's what this does. It should be fairly straightforward. I think between the two gift products and you probably end up with about 35, 40, well, actually about 40 flights. And if you have both private and instrument gift downloaded on your sim. And if you run a sim, even if you don't use gift, it's probably worth just downloading those from the Scenario Store, just so they're available if somebody comes in who has a gift license. So anyways, it can get a little much. So we have all of our list of flights here. I'm going to go in and show you what a saved flight looks like. So we'll do this San Diego carrier landing. In this case, it's a straightforward saved flight. So a saved flight is basically just a set of starting conditions, a location, time of day, weather, and then an aircraft configuration associated with that. This is, it doesn't have any programming in the flight. The gift flights do, saved flights don't. In this case, we have the Cessna 172 with the steam gauge panel plugged in. And we're over San Diego, 500 feet, lined up on an aircraft carrier in a 172. That'll be fun. Oh, we got a question here. I saw motion something on the device list. Is this new? No, so this sim that I'm connected to is a MCX that includes motion. So that it's, in this case, right now, this unit is just a switch panel. It's not actually hooked up to the whole motion system because we're in testing with it. So that's why the motion, there's a red X on the motion system. It is not required to start the flight though. So it says motion system off here. As a UI guy in a perfect world, I'd get rid of that button. But if you turn it on, it won't do anything because the motion system isn't connected. It'll still start though. So we'll click start flight. And this is the screen our sort of flight in progress screen that will always show. So right now in another room, it's starting the engine, it's starting the sim up for me, loading the scenario, doing all that kind of stuff. There are a few notes here that I think are important to talk about. So motion system is not required, but if it is on and if it is hooked up and it's not showing up in the device list, check the emergency cockpit stop. That's the number one easiest thing. That thing, when that button gets pushed in, it locks in place. So you have to twist it and then it'll pop out. And then if you're going to use the sim for instrument experience recency currency requirements under 6157, you need to make sure you have IMC conditions set in the simulated world. You can't be able to look outside and see the runway and count it as an approach. Okay, so we are the flight is loaded in Navigator. This is what it'll show on the sim. We have our screens. You'll be on the runway ready to go, or in this case, in the air ready to go. So that's that. From here, I can click resume flight, which will unpause it. I can end the flight, or I can jump straight into the instructor station. It'll show me, pilot Josh Harnagle. So this will be logged back to my account. We'll get into the instructor station in a second. So, but I want to finish up some dispatch stuff. So I'm going to click in flight. And we should it's going to unload, maybe take it a minute. Let's see. If this breaks, I'll get Duncan to go back and fix it. There we go. Okay. So connections closed, sim engine stopping. And as this rolls out, we should be good to go. So, okay, we got a question from Mike. We do not use Gift. Is that something we need to subscribe to? So that's kind of a bigger conversation we can have. But Gift is a product that we sell that is it's flight training for students that doesn't necessarily require an instructor to be in the sim. So it gives coaching on maneuvers. We have a private pilot version, an instrument version, and it grades those. So those are a Gift license is typically sold to an individual pilot. It can be resold by the school. We'll sell it wholesale to a school and they can put a little charge on it, or a pilot can buy it directly from us. The sim has got to be updated and you need to have the content pack downloaded for it to work, but the sim doesn't get a Gift license. The user gets the Gift license. So as an operator of a flight school, it's not something you need to subscribe to. It's something you should explore and look at and think maybe this would be good for my students to do, but it's not you could buy some licenses to resell to students, but it's not something that the flight school itself purchases. Okay, all right, so now we're back in dispatch. We looked at a free flight. We can go in here to folders, just another way to sort it so we can see our instrument ratings, all that, our individual courses, in this case, Gift. Anything we download from the scenario store will show up as a folder here. We can see all of our Gift flights, and then we can see all of our saved flights. So like I said, a saved flight is just a set of starting conditions, time of day, weather, etc., and location. You can create saved flights. If you get the airplane in a configuration you like, and everything's good, through the instructor station, you can click save. And when you save the flight, it will show up in here the next time you go into dispatch after the flight ends. Okay, a couple of quick things here on this. on a saved flight, you can edit title, description, and you can add some tags if you wanted to. So like VFR. Now it's got a VFR tag. Great. Okay. What does that mean? VFR tag. I go to all here. I click this. And now I have a filter. I can click VFR and there it is. So if you build a series of flights, saved flights for a specific course, like a private pilot or an instrument or something like that, you can tag them together so that it makes it easier to sort and find those missions as you fly. And I do, if you use the sim a bunch, I do recommend creating saved flights for your specific area with specific weather conditions. There's another webinar I give frequently called the Best Practices for Instruction in Redbird. I'd encourage you to go back and watch some of those on YouTube or on our website. But one of the best things you can do for students is have pre-planned, pre-saved flights that you have weather for. So the student can actually look at what the weather in the sim is going to be. And in general, the weather shouldn't just be 100% clear for a VFR flight or low IFR for every IFR flight. It's better to vary it. What that allows you to do as an instructor is later on, you're able to introduce weather as a decision point. And you don't want the mission that you talk about weather as a decision point to be the first time they see weather that's not just 100% clear or 100% IFR. All right, again, a little out of scope. Okay, so those are our saved flights. I can go into free flight, and now free flight allows me to start from anywhere, either on the ground or in the air, and really anywhere in the world if I know a nav aid that I'd like to use. Now this can be turned off. If you want to keep students or if you want to only fly a specific set of missions, you can turn free flight off. But in this case, we're going to leave it on, and I'm going to say Oshkosh because it's getting ready for Oshkosh time. And we'll do runway 36 on the ground is where we're going to start. I can set my starting weather. Again, I pretty much never, ever leave it at 50 miles of visibility. It's just too, it's just unrealistic. Okay, good question. Can the visibility be set below 1 mile? Let's see. Let's 0.5. I think it can. And if it can't be set below 1 mile here, you can definitely set it below 1 mile with the instructor station once the flight loads. So let's say let's do an IFR flight. Now we got that in there. Overcast, cloud base, call it 900. I don't actually know what the AGL is there, or what the ground level is. Set wind speed, direction, type of precipitation, snow, Oshkosh, light, turbulence, etc. And then click start. We can also start in the air if we wanted to. So this is a really good way to set somebody up for an approach or final or something like that. You can use the runway. You can use runways. And when it says runway 36, that means at the end of the runway, of runway 36. You can also say, let's say CYK, which is the Centex VOR here. In this case, I want to start, west on the 090 radial, 15 nautical miles, 115 knots, right? So this is going to put me east of the Centex VOR, heading west 15 miles from the VOR. With this, you can basically set up somebody anywhere you really want to. So I'm going to click start. It'll load again. The flight loading takes a little bit of time. There's some stuff in the background that has to happen to get it running. But once it's popped up and going, so I can click instructor station here and we'll hop over to the instructor station. There will be some more time at the end if you want to ask some more questions about dispatch, but I do want to give plenty of time to get into the instructor station because there's the most stuff there. We got a question about live weather. We do not have the ability to do live weather at this point, and honestly, it's not directly on our. It's really not on the roadmap right now. Okay, so we'll hit instructor station. So now I go over to instructor station. If you are, you can also get to the instructor station from the home screen here. Click instructor station. It'll take you back to the same place, and it loads me up. I'm paused, and so there's my Centex VOR on the 090 radial, and it's, I thought I had a heading of 270. Let's see what, oh, it's because I'm, yeah, heading 272. And if I unpause the flight, I'm not going to let this run very much because there's no pilot. So we'll see there. My heading is updated a little bit, and I'm able to get all the RPM numbers, all that kind of stuff is updating across that top line. So this gives an instructor the ability to see what's happening in the sim. You can also go over here. I'm going to close this, and you can go here, and we'll get a primary flight display of this flight. So I can see heading, airspeed, altitude, rate of descent, all the sort of basics that a primary flight display can do. I cannot control the airplane, right? I don't have an autopilot or anything that'll make it turn, but I can see what the student is doing from here without necessarily having to look over their shoulders. I can also see frequencies if they have the GPS tuned, etc. All right, so we're in a right spiraling dive. So I'm going to go ahead and pause. Okay, so now simulation is paused. You'll notice on the map here, we started to see our own ship track. So that should be pretty straightforward. This is, I think it should be obvious. ForeFlight's an inspiration. We want it to look and feel sort of like the things that you like ForeFlight, because most pilots are comfortable with that. But this really is the instructor station. This is not the navigation tool that you would use in the sim, right? In the sim, you should be using ForeFlight just the way you would in the airplane. We have products that will allow you to connect that. But this is really for the instructor to have insight into what's happening and to be able to control the sim. It's not for the pilot to navigate with. The map has got is a straightforward aeronautical map. We have our waypoints, runways, airspace, etc. We'll get into relocation in a second, but it should be pretty straightforward. Now, it's similar to most maps. Like if you zoom out here and I scroll off, I can click this button and it'll recenter me on the own ship, on the airplane. I can go over here. I can select different maps. I will say that the VFR and IFR sectionals maps are fairly out of date. Those are difficult, and there's a lot of data associated with those. So we generally don't update those very much because this is for reference for the instructor. It's not to navigate with like ForeFlight would be. On the lower right here, you have this is your resume button. This is end, so this will stop the flight. So if I click this, I'm flying again. I click it, it switches to pause. I can click it and I'll go back to pause. This blue plus button will pull up some things that I can do, some functions. So number one, save flight. This is where I click this and I can type in a title, description, click save, and that will now show, that flight would now show up in dispatch for me to use next time. You can print, so that'll print a map, including the own ship track, as well as, not that one, the vertical track, altitude and ground speed associated with that flight. So you're able to have a printout of it if you want. Again, if you've logged into your Redbird account, this will all get uploaded to the cloud and you'll be able to view it from anywhere. So we're required by the FAA to have a print function. So honestly, that's why that's it. Reposition to last start. This can be quite useful. So if you set this up so that you're on a final approach, going into an airport and you want them to shoot, you want to shoot an ILS 4 or 5 times in a row, you can reposition to that point and then click, once you're done doing the maneuver, going missed, whatever, click reposition to last start, and it'll move you back to where you started the last time. That's very handy. You can also bookmark the position so that you can reference it later, and it'll show up here in the bookmarked position. So, and we'll get to this reposition function in a second. Okay, any questions on that stuff? I think that's pretty straightforward and handy. All right, so let's talk about weather. How did you get these buttons to show up? Oh, those, Lonnie, those buttons are under this blue plus here. If you click that, it'll pop up these additional functions for you. You click X and they go away. Okay, under weather, we have two types of weather, and this is honestly my least favorite part of Navigator, and it's one that I'd really like to figure out. It's a difficult UI problem, but we've separated it into basic weather and advanced weather. Basic weather lets you set surface winds, turbulence, and then kind of pre-programmed conditions, weather conditions. So I can set wind at whatever speed, gusting to whatever speed, put in turbulence. Basic conditions, these are sort of FAA definitions. So clear, pretty straightforward. IFR, I think, is 1,000 AGL, 3 miles of visibility. Low IFR is, I think, 500 AGL, 1 mile of visibility. Cat 1 is minimum ILS minimums, so 200 and a quarter. And then IMC, have to look honestly what IMC is, but it's bad weather, similar to IFR probably. VFR puts it up above 10,000, the clouds above 10,000 and visibility above 10, and MVFR puts it at visibility at 5. We can, under the VFR conditions, we can sort of add in some rain showers, pop up thunderstorms, that kind of stuff, but it maintains VFR. So it doesn't lower the clouds down below, I think, 10 or 7,000 feet. And then IFR, same thing. You can put in some conditions that are difficult in IFR. Embedded thunderstorm is my favorite, and it is tricky. Okay, once you've set the weather you want, so we'll say IFR, little windy, light turbulence, I can hit apply, and that will load it up. Okay, so now my METAR right here, I have a METAR string. It says winds 301 at 9, gusting to 19, 3 3/4 statute miles of visibility, overcast at 1,000, and then 15 and 5, 2921. Let's see what the difference between IMC is. IMC is, okay, so IMC is just 16th miles of visibility, no clouds, but only 16 mile of visibility. That's one of those made up sim only weather conditions, right? You wouldn't see that in the real world. But what this does is it means from the ground to infinity, you're not going to, it's clouds, right? So if you want somebody to go missed, you can click IMC and they will go missed. Low IFR drops it down to 600, Cat 1, half mile, and 300. But so anyways, you can click through these, see what it would give you weather-wise, click apply, and now it's been pushed to the sim. Advanced weather is a little more complicated. So in advanced weather, I have 3 blocks. I have surface conditions, so I can select temperature, pressure, visibility, and surface winds. So when I click this, when I click edit, I can say my surface visibility, I want the top of this layer to be at 1600 MSL, let's say, and I want my visibility to be down at a 1/4 mile. So from the surface to 1600 feet MSL, I'll have a 1/4 mile of visibility. This is where it gets a little tricky because you have to stack these layers. So what'll happen is above 1600 MSL, it's clear, 100% clear. I can do things with the wind as well, add in wind shear, etc., like that, and we'll click done. Now this hasn't been added to the sim world yet, not until I hit apply. But before I do that, I'm going to want to edit the other visibility layers. So I have a surface visibility layer that ends at 1600 MSL. I'm going to hit edit. Okay, so I have two other visibility layers. I'm going to get rid of this one, and I'm just going to have my top an additional visibility layer. So this guy, I'm going to start at 1601, right? So this surface visibility stops at 1600. My visibility layer above that starts at 1600, and I'm going to have this go up to 50,000. Oopsies. They're tied together. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. I did that wrong. That's why it was messing up. All right. So 1601. So layer bottom, 1601, layer top, 50,000. And this one, I want my visibility to be, let's call it 4.5 miles. Okay. Click done. So now I have two surface visibilities. You can see how you could stack this and create a very kind of dynamic situation. And the thing to remember is in the sim engine, visibility is more effective at reducing what you can see out of the cockpit than clouds. So clouds do have an associated reduction in visibility, but if you want it to be 100% IMC, make sure you have a visibility layer in there for that altitude that's at 0. And then I can do change my cloud layers. So in this case, I'm going to put a cloud layer right at 1600 feet, because seems like that's where I'm building a ceiling. I'm going to make it broken, and then I can select the type of cloud. Now the thickness of the layer is determined by the type, and that's unfortunately built into Prepare, the sim engine we use, and we can't do anything about it. So you have a 3,200 foot thick cloud layer, 11,600 foot cloud layer, a 3,600 foot cloud layer, and then a 21,600 foot cloud layer. And you can just select the type of clouds to determine the thickness of the layer. The clouds do look different visually, but for the most part, the only one that looks dramatically different is thunderstorm. And there's a typo there, so we'll get that fixed in the next update. So in this case, we'll say in 3,600. So that means the tops of my clouds will be at 5,200 feet MSL if I select that. I can add precipitation in here. I can add icing and turbulence into that cloud layer. So this turbulence, the turbulence on the surface wind is associated only with that wind layer. It is not associated with a cloud. So you can have turbulence it's sort of like clear air turbulence versus in cloud turbulence, if that makes some sense. And if I wanted to, I can add another layer. So now I have one cloud layer here, and then I have another cloud layer. And then we'll put this one way up high, make it thin, broken. Oh, I'm sorry. So the top of the cloud is actually live updated. That's a nice update they've done. I didn't know that. So you can, when you select stratus, the top is 3,600. You select cumulus, the top is 1160. So stratus looks like it's 2,000 feet, 11,000 feet, 1,500 feet, 1,400 feet, 21,000 feet, 20,000 feet. So select some other layers, blah, blah, blah. Okay, and I can hit done. Once I've got it all set up here, I click apply. And now if we were to go into the sim, we would see this cloud layer. We can also see up here, we have the METAR has been updated. So we have a quarter mile visibility, broken at 1,600, broken at 18,900, temperature and pressure. Okay, Corey's got a question. What weather settings do you recommend for IFR currency to be saved for use at multiple airports and approaches? So what I would do probably is if you're just doing, if it's like you're going to fly currency mission sorties at a wide range of airports. So you don't know beforehand what airports you're going to use. I would honestly just use these basic weather conditions here, and set like IFR, which puts it at 1,000 feet, or set low IFR, puts it at 600 feet. Cat 1 puts it at 300 feet, and just use that. So that way you can, and it'll vary based on that. That's a AGL, right? 300 feet AGL. And so you just use that as a quick go-to for if you're just pounding out approaches at multiple airports. If it's part of an instrument rating or a pre-programmed IPC that uses maybe a handful of airports, then I would suggest using the advanced weather feature and building a more interesting, more in-depth weather model, weather system, and then saving that. And generally speaking, I prefer to have a couple of approaches where, I prefer it to be realistic. Every approach should not be to minimums. During the train, obviously you need to have some approaches that go that low, but there should be some where you pop out at 700 feet or 500 feet or 1,000 feet, just so it adds a lot more realism. And what you don't want to do is in the sim sessions create this sort of expectation that it's always going to do this because I'm in the sim, just to add some more flexibility and realism. Hopefully that answers the question. Okay. So I know that the weather part is a little dense. This is in the user guide. I would play around with this and try to figure it out. It's can be very powerful, but it's also it's kind of difficult to use. But basic weather is there for you. It's straightforward and works great. Okay, so let's talk about position. So relocating. So we can relocate in a couple of ways. Probably the easiest way is we go to the map. We say, I want to fly the ILS-13 into San Marcos. So I click right here and I say, I'm gonna relocate here. I also can click and say, oh, look, here's some nearest airports, nearest nav aids, nearest waypoints. I can use any of these. But if I want to click on the reference point, I also have my bookmark position. But I want to say, I'm going to go here. I can click there. I get the lat long. We'll do AGL. We'll call it 2,500. Heading, let's see, what should that be? 060. And the radial, so this is radial from that point. If the distance is 0, it doesn't really matter what the radial is, right? And we'll click reposition. And now the simulation gets paused, but then boom, I moved over to the point where I was at. I can unpause, and now I'm flying. Okay. All right. And so that's one way to reposition. And I think probably if it's someplace close and you're just doing, working on procedures, that's a useful way to do it. If you want to go someplace totally different, you can click position and let's say KHEF, which is Manassas. And I'm going to take off from 3-4 right on the ground. Okay, reposition. And now I will get moved to Manassas eventually. It does take, this kind of reposition does take a little bit longer. It'll say simulation suspended. You might have seen that up there briefly. That means the simulation is reloading because I'm moving such a long distance, the sim had to reload. So now I'm at Manassas, Virginia, outside of DC, and I'm on the end of the runway, ready to go. So if I click here, let's unpause it and see where we're at. All right. So we do have a little bit of power in, I think. So we're starting to roll forward, but we're on the ground there. Okay. Pause it and go back. Position, it's just like free flight, honestly. You can start from a nav aid, waypoint, wherever, in the air, on the ground. Okay, now in failures, so I have the ability to immediately add a failure, or I can schedule a failure for later. So, and the failures are based on the aircraft model you have installed. In this case, I have a glass 172, or excuse me, a steam gauge analog panel 172. So I can fail the flaps. I can fail the engine, individual mags, airspeed, brakes, nav, all that stuff. Let's say I want to fail the engine in 15 minutes. All right, so now I have a engine failure queued up in 15 minutes. If I click, if I go back to the map here and click unpause, now as this runs, I should be able to go back into failure and it updates 14 minutes and 53 seconds, right? So I can, let's say I wanted to, in the meantime, fail the, get a GPS RAM failure. All right, so now this failure is active and this failure is scheduled. I can hit reset and let's do this. I wouldn't recommend adding a bunch of failures. It's one of the things I think people do, instructors do poorly, is they add too many failures. But if you have a bunch of failures queued up, you can clear one individually or you can clear them all. And this will apply just to current failures, and scheduled failures are their own sort of subgroup that you can remove or clear independently. Mike, yes, this webinar is recording. It'll be available on our YouTube channel and on our website. Okay, all right. So I'm gonna get rid of that engine failure. And now let's go to our next little tab here, which is weight and balance. This is pretty straightforward. Again, this is based on the aircraft. In the 172, we have 2 fuel tanks, 4 passenger or 4 cockpit occupants, and then a baggage. We can adjust these as needed. This is how you pull fuel out of the tanks. Again, when we move this stuff, we got to hit apply, and now that gets pushed to the sim. This does affect the weight and balance in the CG. So if you're flying along in cruise and you change the weight drastically and you're trimmed in a specific condition, when the weight gets pushed into the sim, the airplane will be out of trim and you'll need to retrim it. Okay. What are your recommendations for students' real-time ATC environment? Okay, that's a good question. So there's something called Pilot Edge, which does work with our sims, I believe, and it does work with our sims. It's a paid service, and they are sort of restricted, I think, to California, maybe a few other locations, but they have real controllers and they work really well. I think it works really well, especially for instrument students that are really working on their, talking on the radio, getting approach clearances, stuff like that. Other than that, unfortunately, right now, the answer is instructor. It's one of the things that is we've tried to fix in the past. The product we built did not work all that great. I think with some of the new AI voice stuff and language learning models that have come out, there's some potential for another round of that. And I will say that I think that is being worked on at the moment, but I don't have any good answer for you right now on that. Okay. All right, time, very straightforward, easy, day, dawn, dusk, night, and that uses local time in the sim, so it'll put it at night at the location that the sim is at, right? Not the location where the physical sim is at, but where the virtual airplane is at will be nighttime. We can set Zulu or use local time, but this is, in this case, the sim is in the Eastern time zone because we're in Manassas, Virginia. So the time that is shown here is Eastern time. If we were to move to another location that was in a different time zone, this would update. Obviously, Zulu doesn't update, but this does. And it is based, again, on the location of the virtual simulated airplane, not the physical location in the real world of the sim. And just like everything else, if we wanted to change it, we change it and then click apply. When you change the time, you see that sim suspended pop down again. The sim has to reload all the graphics. Okay, last feature here, reality mode. So reality is where we break the laws of physics. So we can do simple things like just increase the simulation rate. So if you're flying somewhere a long distance and you don't want it to take 3 hours, you can bump up the simulation rate and it'll go really fast. But it's still doing the same. It's still burning fuel at the correct rate. So when you get there, the fuel will be lower, weather will change, all that kind of stuff. You can also do this orbit mode, which if you click orbit mode, it makes it so that the controls of the sim no longer do what you expect them to do. They will allow you to move in virtual world in, you can go straight up and down, you can go forward, back, left, right, not flying, but just like, it's like God reached down, picked up the airplane and moved it someplace. It can be handy for moving an airplane, fine tuning a location position. It can be good for, showing a airport environment for a student, that kind of thing. And it's generally handy. It's a good instructor feature to move things along quickly. The simulation rate is the one I tend to use the most, because it can be quite, if you're on an autopilot and it's a 30-minute leg, bumping it up to 1x, 2x, or 3x will shorten that down, and you'll be able to get through that en route portion, which nothing was really happening, quicker. Okay. We are officially at the end of the allotted time for the webinar, but I don't want to end it if there's any questions. So to reconnect or review everything, if you have any questions, type them in, I'll get to them. Dispatch is how you launch flights. Oh, we're in a flight right now. Navigator instructor station is how you change the flight once it's been launched and you're in the world, in the virtual world. And then scenario store is how we get our content packs. Sim management has got all the information about the sim, and it has the ability to change the settings. Connect is how you share a session, like what I'm doing right now. And then we have a user's guide. We can also turn a sim off here if you want, restart, shut down. There's also the button on the computer that'll work, do the same thing. So if there's no more questions, that'll be the end of the webinar. I appreciate everybody. Thank you, guys.